I don't want to put you on the spot here, but say, for example, you're in this scenario where you've had this conversation with a client and they've bought into, okay, our new customer acquisition strategy is going to be largely demand gen focused. We have 5 personas that we're going to go after with this creative. We're going to upload this frequently, and it's going to be deployed largely across Meta, and we're going to capture some of it in Google, whatever it is. But the problem we have, or the challenge we have rather, is that we are relatively small. How do we identify what's working and what's not? Like, for example, I think it's not quite the same, but with a lot of lead gen clients I have, quite often they'll say something along the lines of, we've had 3 or 4 leads in this location, or 3 or 4 leads for this keyword. Why don't we just scale that? And I think the challenge is, obviously, you need much more data to identify what patterns are and what opportunities are. So how do you identify that for a smaller business?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. In this day and age, it's never been harder. It's never been more accessible to get into an advertising space or paid marketing space. Equally, it's never been as challenging to make it work.
Yeah.
Because it's so much is reliant on past data and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a tough one. Actually, I think, the point you're making there is, clients often will look for statistical significance where it doesn't exist, or will have bias. And, we've seen a tiny volume of relative performance in this one area. Well, let's double down on that. When you kind of know as a media buyer with experience that actually that's almost meaningless in terms of statistical significance.
It goes back to that algorithm point of like, you're restricting the algorithm.
Yeah, exactly that. I think ultimately it comes down to setting expectation. They have to know that this is not a silver bullet. Digital marketing generally, but media buying is not a silver bullet. I think people have alluded to this before, but there is an expectation that I put in £1 and I make £4 back immediately. And that's what it's there for. That isn't the case at all. Maybe 15 years ago, yes, you could do that. Now you have to be far more patient and understanding of that process, in that it is testing and learning. It is building data over time. There has to be an expectation that for 3 to 6 months, potentially, you will not be making money on this. You will be building data, figuring out what's working and why, and then trying to find structures in which you can kind of scale a little bit. It's much more difficult, I think, in lead gen, where you're right, you might never have the volume of data to fully go automated and get Google to kind of do the heavy lifting for you. You're still going to have to sit in those manual bids. You're going to have to understand where you're sitting there. And a lot of this is, you can have the best possible build structure, but if you've got any compromising factors on your page experience or your offer or your website, that's going to kill most of your performance. So I think for a new business starting out, most of the time should be spent on making sure that your offer positioning post-click is the best it possibly can be.
Yeah.
We have definitely moved away, particularly in the higher end B2B space or lead gen space, where it's no longer sufficient to just have a lead capture form with some wishy-washy content on the page and expect people to fill it out. You really need to give them a reason. And it might not be speak to us, contact us. It might be white papers. It might be value add stuff. It might be some form of lead magnet, basically, that gets people into a system, offers them value, builds trust, and then you can kind of work them down that funnel. That's more important than it's ever been. But that's what I would do for new clients starting out with lead gen. It's not go from 0 to 100 immediately and just try and go for what you perceive to be the best possible keywords. It's, have I done the due diligence on the landing page? Have I made the messaging correct? Have I really done that persona work? Have I got something to offer people that may be in a consideration or research phase? That's where I put sort of 60-70% of my resource effort, is making sure that is really, really good first. And then, you can start to think about how you measure your performance on the paid side.